Live right here on Sports Grid on a Tuesday morning. Kevin Walsh and Donnie right side with you over the next 2 hours with a ton to get to across a number of sports. DRS, how you feeling?
Feeling good today, and you're right. The topics abound. NBA, college football, NFL, Major League Baseball. The next 2 hours, action-packed. We're ready to go here on a Dinger Tuesday. Absolutely.
Let's hit the ground running. The AP Top 25 release. Once again, no surprise. It's Alabama at the top. Some ultimately familiar faces joining them near the top. Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, and Notre Dame rounding out that top five.
Yep, same song and dance every year, and I'm perfectly fine with it. The good football teams are up top. The bad football teams are down below, and we'll see who rises to the occasion because we've got some pretty good bangers early in the season this year.
Yeah. The big discrepancy from the AP Top 25 and the coaches poll, a first-place vote for Texas. The AP Top 25, no Texas at all. We'll expand a little bit on that as we get closer and closer to week 0 in the college football season beginning. How about some big-time Major League Baseball headlines and a tough one for the World Series favorite Los Angeles Dodgers? News has come down that Walker Buehler will be having season-ending surgery. The Dodgers, still the favorites here at plus 350 to win the World Series, but a tougher hill to climb now without Walker Buehler.
Yeah, sooner or later it's supposed to catch up to you, right? Max Scherzer, Trevor Bauer, Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, but it doesn't seem to catch up to the Dodgers during the regular season. We'll see if it does in the playoffs, but sooner or later you need those frontline pitchers to dominate in the postseason, and I don't know if the Dodgers have that anymore.
They at least don't have the guys with the pedigree, I think, that you would anticipate for a Dodgers roster. But they certainly have some guys that have been having some awesome seasons. We'll continue to see how this plays out for the LA Dodgers, who put another result in the win column last night for nothing against the Milwaukee Brewers. One team that really never enters the win column, that's the Los Angeles Angels. And the only time they enter the headlines is when Shohei Ohtani is on the mound, who was pretty solid. 6 innings of work, only 2 earned runs, 8 Ks to just 1 walk. Also was able to nab a hit as well. Ohtani is special. The Angels are terrible. They lose 6-2 to the Mariners.
What if I would have told you, Kevin, that we sit here on August 16, 2022, Shohei Ohtani's pitched a full season to an ERA of a 2.69, and he's nowhere near the MVP race, or at least the AL MVP race, where he can actually win this thing. So what we think at this point now, phenomenal pitching performance, but it just doesn't get it done anymore. Your team has to be good. You have to rake at the plate along with pitching well in order to get the job done. Doesn't look like Ohtani is going to be able to do it. Great season overall, but Angels stink.
Yeah, they certainly do. And it's also hard. Aaron Judge is having a phenomenal year. And it's getting to the point where it feels like he's the only Yankee you can say that about. The Yanks lose again. Shutout again at home, this time to the Tampa Bay Rays. Donnie, they enjoyed 4 innings against your boy Ryan Yarbrough. They had nothing to show for it there. Struck out 6 times against Yarbrough. Yanks right now, the slump continues.
Yeah, scuffling here as you take a look at Ryan Yarbrough. How about he improves to, Kevin, 1-7 on the season after this win against the New York Yankees. Embarrassing performance at the plate. And I know it's a long season. You go through these ruts here, but the Yankees better shake out of it quick here. Come on now, Yanks. Get it together.
Certainly a slump that is starting to hit a concerning level, I think, for most that have backed the New York Yankees in any futures markets there. Certainly, if you had this team to have the best record in baseball, hopes for that feel absolutely diminished. The radio audience is here on a Tuesday morning. The early line is live on Sirius XM channel 159. One more baseball headline to get to, and that is the NL Cy Young favorite now over minus 300. Sandy Alcantara, 7 innings of scoreless baseball against this Padres lineup. Struck out 7 as well. Keeps that ERA low, 1.92. Sandy having an unbelievable season.
Yeah, I bet on this one, and I lost. Minus 140 price here on the San Diego Padres. Musgrove went 6 innings, 3 earned runs, and it wasn't nearly enough as Alcantara was dominant there. Should have just went with the under. Big ballpark down there, 6.5 is a total. Didn't even come close.
Alcantara and Musgrove made a 50% of a nice boost, though, from the FanDuel Sportsbook 5+ Ks from those two, along with Garrett Cole and Shohei Ohtani at a plus 175 price. That did come in. In the NFL, Alvin Kamara might just play the entire season. A continued pushing back of his hearing might see Kamara avoid suspension altogether for this year. A huge boost for the New Orleans Saints as they look to get after it for the first time without head coach Sean Payton.
That's monster news here, because if you take a look at the Saints, Kevin, as a whole, it's one of the better skill position outfits in the entire NFL, and it looks like they're going to be healthy to start the season.
Alvin Kamara is one of the best backs. I don't think we are going to be getting season-long props, though, on him because the suspension question mark will loom all year long. I am sure the Saints, though, would like to have some clarity if he's absolutely not going to miss any time, because then that middle season suspension comes in and it really throws your team off platform. Lastly, here in the NBA, a settlement between the Sixers and Ben Simmons. Ben trying to recoup some of that $20+ million salary as the Sixers were continuing to fine him for not showing up. All in all, a settlement agreed between the two, the financials agreed upon by both parties to being kept secret.
Yeah, kept secret. I hope he got maybe like $50,000 back out of that $20 million. I would like to see the final tabulation on that one, K-Dub.
I don't think you would, because I think it upsets you a lot. He got a lot more than $50,000. The AP Top 25 is where we started all off. It's the early line on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
They play less games.
The early line.
Take a look at the top 4 seeds here in the Big Ten. They're going to play less.
Rodgers and
the morning
Russell
after.
Wilson. We saw movement in the marketplace like
Orlando
Fantasy
Magic.
Sports
The Cleveland
Today.
Cavaliers are a little thin as well.
Newswire.
Minus 160 favorite on the money line today for Arizona.
Pharrell Coast to
PBG,
Coast.
that's where they win cups. They win Stanley Cups over there. Give me the
Game
Penguins.
time
kind of
decisions.
bizarre when you consider everybody is out for the Warriors.
In-game live all access.
I like Vandy against Bama. I think Vandy can win the game, take a 4.5.
In-game live. Prime time.
The PGA champion.
In-game live. Overtime.
done before the final bet.
Get the winning edge. Only on SportsGrid. Diamond Bets.
Dodgers heading into the weekend, minus 160. This morning, when you wake up bright and early and get the crust out of your eye, it's plus 155. The Mets were plus 220 after Jacob deGrom's 1-0 win yesterday, plus 200. So the Mets are getting ever closer here, my friend, to this National League number. It's a 3-team race for the National League crown. It's the Dodgers, it's the Mets, it's the Braves. What's fascinating to me is that the Brewers are still plus 1,400 and the Cardinals are plus 15.
Only on SportsGrid. Pharrell Coast to Coast.
If we're gonna treat everyone the same in this world, then he deserves to be treated the same way. A-Rod, McGuire, Sosa. I believe all of his numbers are phony. He's a fake. He is a cheater. He is a user. He is a fraud. He is a steroid guy. All those numbers, those jacked home run totals. He hit a home run every day.
The SportsGrid Network.
Sports Professor Rick Horrow into the $1.3 trillion business of sports with your daily numbers game. Well, Bob Chapek and Disney certainly know how to inspire. And remember, their fourth quarter earnings of last year said, we're flat, so let's get to a point where gaming is a central focus of ours. A little controversy at Disney relative to Florida. But the bottom line is it doesn't impact the gaming industry as well. And it's rumored to be a bottom-line mega deal with DraftKings or Caesars or others to generate significant dollars. They were also looking at the hub of a wheel to be up to $3 billion in revenue enhancement over time. That may not be the way they cut the deal. They may partner with a large company and take little risk, maybe a little less revenue. However they do it, Chapek said the announcement is coming soon, and Disney, as they usually do, will dominate the space. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Daily Numbers Game.
Yesterday we saw the unveiling of the preseason AP Top 25. Now we are all aware that this is a difficult task to do before we play any games, but it helps set the stage for the season, gives us an idea how people are seeing these teams before everything gets underway. That top 5 for the AP Top 25 actually is the exact same as that of the coaches poll. The differences really start to shake up throughout, though, the further you go down. As we mentioned in our headlines, the Texas omission really jumped off the page when you consider the fact they actually received a first-place vote in the coaches poll. Donnie, in this AP Top 25, what caught your eye?
Yeah, if we're looking just at, the old guard, right, which particularly pertains to the SEC, Alabama number 1, Georgia number 3, Texas number 6. So 3 teams in the SEC in the top 6. Wouldn't shock us again, Kevin, right? 2 teams out of the final 4 will end up being from SEC competition. Notre Dame at number 5, Michigan at number 8. Not a lot really shaking it up outside of that Texas, where they're the 18th, as you said, came in 18th here in the coaches poll. But then if you take a look at the AP Top 25, they're not ranked at all. It seems like this is what we're used to every single year. And also, is Clemson getting a little bit more respect this year than in previous years? Because you say, Donnie, they're always ranked in the top 1, 2, 3, or 4. But are they just looking at the ACC saying at the end of the year, Clemson should be there? Because right now, I'm not so sure that Clemson really is a top 4 program in the country entering into the season, because usually it's based on what do you bring in back, and specifically, what do you bring in back at quarterback?
I'll probably end up higher on Clemson than you because, one, I think in college football it matters less about quarterback than, say, within the NFL. This Clemson team is going to have, at worst, a top 5 defense in the sport and very likely the best defense in college football. That alone could be enough for them to win the ACC. DJU, a lot of question marks, all very fair, but we know the talent is there. And it's not just, we saw it flashed in high school. We saw it during the time that he had to step in for Trevor Lawrence as a freshman. We know it's there. He's dropped a considerable amount of weight coming into this season. I have no issues with Clemson up there at 4. One other thing that did catch my attention, though, is where Cincinnati comes in at 23, which, again, is no problem there, right? But in some way, I feel like you could understand if an AP Top 25 poll offers a lot of credence to the prior year. I think that might be how some would justify Notre Dame being at the 5th overall spot in, the AP Top 25. Cincinnati all the way down, though, at 23. But again, it is understandable, Donnie. Desmond Ridder, the back-to-back American Conference player, Offensive Player of the Year, gone to the NFL. 6 defensive players. You do not usually see that from a single G5 team gone to the NFL. The expectations for Cincinnati are still to be the best team in their conference, but it looks like Cincinnati could possibly even run the table this year, and that might not actually be enough to see them return to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that, too, because you're taking a look at, the building and the foundation pieces of that Cincinnati Bearcats team was basically Desmond Ridder. You have that superstar player. You win on the biggest stage. You go into Notre Dame and you win. So you say, okay, let's continue to move up the rankings. They have that, signature win, so to speak. Luke Fickell's a fantastic coach. He's coming back. You know who else is really good? Their offensive line, Kevin. All 5 starters intact heading back into this season. So if you're going to have a little bit of question marks here at the quarterback position or maybe some of the skill positions, it's always nice to have your head coach and also your offensive line completely intact coming back to the season. But I do think them being ranked in the top 25 is sort of one of those, little checks here where you tip the cap and say, great season last year. We'll start you in the top 25 and good luck to wherever you go, because that's really a placeholder from what you did the previous season. But I don't see them making that magical run here into the college football playoff this year. I just don't see it. You needed a lot to go your way last year, and it did happen. And on the backs of Desmond Ridder had a sensational overall season.
And again, look at that week 1 spread. It is a true road game being played up against Arkansas. We know how much that matters in college football, but a full touchdown dog to open the season up there against the Razorbacks should make for a really fun top 25 ranked versus ranked game. The big ranked versus ranked game is going to be Ohio State and Notre Dame, number 2 versus number 5. So in that respect, it's going to have a lot of juice. But in terms of what the odds are telling us, either Notre Dame is not a top 5 team, or the gap between 1 and 2, being Alabama and Ohio State, is as big as we have seen in quite some time, whereas the top 2 teams in the country versus the rest of the landscape there. Ohio State is a 15-point favorite. This number has been only climbing in favor of the Buckeyes right now as they host the Irish in Marcus Freeman's true coaching debut. I know he was there for the bowl game, but this is really the true debut for Marcus Freeman. And, man, the expectations for Notre Dame, despite being a top 5 team, I feel like you lose this game by 10, and it's a job well done.
Yeah, and then that's what you're going to measuring stick game that we talk about. And so many times, Kevin, that you see in the past, right? You have a big game on your college football schedule. You usually play a patty cake to start the season, so to speak, right? Arkansas, or let's see who else is on there, Toledo, one of the MAC teams. And you say, okay, let's get started here for the Ohio State Buckeyes. The reason I bring this up right now is you take a look, if they're going to play Notre Dame right out of the gate. If I'm Notre Dame, Kevin, this is exactly when I want Ohio State. And not to say, like, well, Donnie, they're a veteran-laden team. They have great wide receivers, a Heisman Trophy, caliber quarterback coming back. I understand it. But I don't want them to work out any kinks here. I want a surprise. Mm-hmm. What did you just say, Kevin? The first true game for Freeman as head coach for Notre Dame, he can come up with the surprises. There's not a lot of game tape on how he operates, 24 to 36 games and say, okay, we know the flow of his offense. We know the flow of the defense there. We know how Notre Dame wants to play, if they want to be aggressive, if they don't want to be aggressive. I love the fact for Notre Dame, if you're going to win this game, it's best to get this in the first game with your chance to take on Ohio State, where maybe they don't have all the kinks worked out coming in from, working out in training camp and doing all that stuff here. I like the fact it's open night. Do I think it goes in the direction? No, I don't. But also, let's take a look at what it takes to win a national championship. Kevin, you got to be in the Final Four here in order to do that. Would you rather play Ohio State now or week 11 during the regular season if you take a loss? You lose, you lick your wounds, and all of a sudden you can look up 8 weeks later, whoa, 9-1 here. 8-1 Notre Dame is here, knocking on the door for the playoff. Their only loss to an undefeated Ohio State team. Not bad. It's not bad. Get it out of the way in the first game and see what you could do.
It's a good point. Notre Dame's season is hardly over if they were to lose this game here to Ohio State. They are 60-1 to win the national championship right now. If they beat the Buckeyes, 20-1? Is that too much of a move? If they beat Ohio State game 1 in Ohio State, Donnie, 60-1 down to 20-1? I mean, that changes a lot of things if they all of a sudden win that. Yeah, it might be less. It's a good point right now. Speaking of 20-1, that's where USC is. And there's a really big disparity right now, it looks like, from where preseason voters are in the Pac-12 and where the odds are on the Pac-12. Oregon's going to play Georgia week number 1, a nice little ranked matchup there. Oregon checks in at 11. Utah checks in at 7. And here we are, though, with the USC Trojans at 14th overall. But meanwhile, Donnie, it is USC up there when we talk about national title odds at 5th overall. USC favored to win the Pac-12. Why do you think the disparity?
I think the disparity is probably in the overall scheduling that they have, Kevin, with their first-ranked opponent's going to be Saturday, October 15th, which will be a tough game up in the muss to take on Utah. But if we're just going over schedules and how you can get into the playoff, because that's the key. You can't win the championship unless you finish in the top 4 and make it into the playoff rounds. Their schedule seems very doable here. And the Notre Dame game that they play, that might be a highly ranked Notre Dame team, and you got them at home.
Utah is playing Florida week 1. A road favorite, but only by 2.5. It is absolutely live that both the Utes and the Ducks drop their opening games of the season, which will impact the odds, no doubt about it. An awesome college football season is coming, but we go to Major League Baseball next. If you want to pick like a pro, you need to be in the know. The future of sports gaming is now, and we take you inside the lines, breaking down all the action and what it means for your bet slip.
Turn down the game and tune into Sports Grid Radio. Other networks talk sports talk, but we walk the walk, right up to the window. Sports Grid Radio.
Listen free on the Sports Grid Radio app, iHeart, or TuneIn, or catch us on SiriusXM Sports Grid Channel 159.
Maurice Allen, 2015-2016 European Long Drive Tour champion, 2017 world number 1. Me personally, I keep my game face on me all the time. Especially coming out of the bunker, leaving the range, or even leaving the course. What's your story?
Pro Football Doc has found its new home right here with Sports Injury Central. And with that comes our expansion into other sports. Sports Injury Central will give you nonstop exclusive injury analysis from experienced team doctors from all 3 major sports. Doctors with resumes that include teams like the Chicago Bulls, the Texas Rangers, and the LA Chargers. So gain a fantasy, DFS, and betting edge right now for free at sicscore.com.
Diamond Bets.
Fernando Tatis Jr. getting popped for a PED suspension for 80 games. Now, I know performance-enhancing drugs are something that, even here at the network, they encourage us, especially myself. They say, please, can you enhance your performance just a little bit more, Joe? This year, it's not going to happen next year for a good chunk of the season. And guess what? This is more important now that you added Juan Soto. So obviously this news rocked Major League Baseball.
Only on Sports Grid.
You might be the next daily fantasy millionaire. No matter what you watch or where you play, learn from the world's best DFS players. Lineup building tools, expert projections, and advanced stats change the way you play the game. Dominate the competition. DailyRoto.com, the player's choice.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
They're not going to start him. So if he comes in, hypothetically, let's say things don't go well and you're at the halfway point, week 8, week 9, you start playing him. I don't believe you can win Rookie of the Year starting halfway through. That kid, Pickens, if they throw him the ball enough, he has looked phenomenally well over any kid I've seen yet.
The Sports Grid Network.
Back right here on Sports Grid with a ton to get to in Major League Baseball, so let's waste no time here. Walker Buehler, done for the season. Season-ending surgery for the ace of this Dodgers staff for the World Series favorites. The question is pretty simple, DRS. How much, if at all, does this change your expectations for the LA Dodgers this year?
I mean, I'm going to say regular season-wise, right? Because we're going to project into the playoffs in just a few moments. I don't think it changes it at all because the Dodgers are just more talented than you are on a night-to-night basis. It's not saying, Kevin, that the Dodgers are more talented if they're going up against Scherzer and DeGrom every single night. I'm just talking about a regular Major League Baseball schedule where you're rotating your lineups, you're rotating your pitching staffs, and you're going forward. Every single series they line up against, Kevin, they're still going to be favored to win. So, having said that, I'm not worried about them now because things usually work out in the Dodgers' favor. But at the same time, once you get to the playoffs and pitching is at a premium and the temperatures turn cooler and you just can't hit the ball 440 feet out of the ballpark and say, we're just more powerful than your squad is, that's where I start to worry. Because as you pointed out when we started talking about the topics of what makes sense for the Dodgers here, yes, they do have very good pitchers. But are you still going to be a very good pitcher in a situation that you're not used to pitching in? Because you know what? Max Scherzer's been there, done that, world champion, pitching at the highest level. Now, has Jacob DeGrom won a World Series? No, but he pitched in one here already. He's been known to step up on the biggest stage. So if we're going to get to a NLCS and it's Tony Gonsolin on the mound versus Max Scherzer, who's going to fold first? Who's going to blink? Because if we're looking at Tony Gonsolin as a pitcher that has the pedigree to do it, he does. He just hasn't done it before. That's my only worry. I'm not worried about the Dodgers all the time. Kevin, they just picked up their 80th win of the season last night and continue to roll, are going to finish with well above 100 wins. But as we know, it doesn't mean anything once you turn to October postseason baseball. I'm not worried now, and I want to give the Dodgers the benefit of the doubt that these pitchers pitching now in the regular season, it's not a mirage, and they can continue to do that in the playoffs.
Tony Gonsolin. Now, again, I know they're limited sample sizes. I know he has obviously had a fantastic year relative to expectations. But Donnie, he has 7 appearances in the postseason. He's given up a home run in 6 of them, with the lone exception being coming out there for 2 pitches and getting like 1 out. All right? Tony Gonsolin does not have playoff pedigree, as you mentioned. In fact, last year, Donnie, he didn't start for them in the postseason, Tony Gonsolin, because that's how loaded this team was when we talk about fantastic pitching. Tyler Anderson's having an unbelievable year, that 13-2 record with a top 15 ERA in Major League Baseball. Those postseason numbers are, again, it's super limited sample size. We're talking about 7 total innings of work. The last time that came, though, was in 2018 as a member of the Colorado Rockies. This guy pitching to a 2.81 ERA. The year before was a 4.81 ERA. Now, the Dodgers are fantastic, and they clearly not just have the best roster in baseball, but they have the best coaches in baseball, right? The way that they are able to maximize everybody that is seemingly out there on a regular basis. But people probably, oh, man, why did you pick the New York Mets to win the World Series? Because if Jacob deGrom is going up against Tony Gonsolin in game number 1 in Los Angeles, the Mets might just be favored in that baseball game. And if Max Scherzer is going up against Tyler Anderson in game number 2 in Los Angeles, the Mets also might be favored in that baseball game. And I'll tell you this right now, Taijuan Walker's going to be favored against Julio Urias in Citi Field. And Carrasco's going to be favored against, who's coming back at that point? Kershaw's going to be injured. Should have just let him pitch for the perfect game. This was going to happen regardless. That's just the truth of it. Is Dustin May going to come from the clouds and save him? Am I meant to believe that Andrew Heaney, Don, is going to pitch to a sub 1.2 ERA in all of his appearances this year? I'm not. I don't at the minimum. The Dodgers are unbelievable. The most consistent team year in, year out. For a long time now, Donnie, it's resulted in only 1 World Series. And I know that probably sounds a little ridiculous. Only 1? You know what? Yes, only 1. They're out there with their $300 million payroll. Only 1 World Series. It's a team that we have seen be beatable in the postseason.
Yes, they absolutely are beatable in the postseason. And by the way, just take a look at some of Tony Gonsolin's numbers. 2 postseasons, Kevin, 2020 and 2021. Remember the whole drag on Clayton Kershaw? Like, great regular season pitcher. Get in the playoffs, he explodes on himself. And then he finally turned the corner. Maybe that's the year for Tony Gonsolin, because in 2020, Kevin, how about this ERA through 4 appearances? 8.68. A little bit jitters there. Probably got better in 2021. Yeah, it got even better to an 11.25 ERA. So you still have those skeletons in the closet where we're expecting what? Gonsolin to be your number 1 starter come playoff time, and he hasn't shaken out of, hey, let me just settle down here and actually get a win under my belt. That's what the Dodgers do, though. If you're looking for the postseason, because I think we can admit things do change, and there's always the funny business, Kevin. We talk about Major League Baseball. Look at all the home runs. Yeah, hitting weather in the summer. Turns into September, then October. Now, wait a second. And they do the test on the baseballs. Why is there less drag on the baseballs? Why are these playoff games 1-0, 2-1? Well, certainly, there's better pitchers and better bullpen and more strategy and more pressure. I get that. But if we're going to deaden those baseballs come the fall, which it seems like they do each and every year the past 2 years in baseball, doesn't that give the advantage to a team like the New York Mets that can outpitch you as opposed to out-hit you? I'm waiting to see that as well.
This is a Dodger season, though, that obviously we've seen them flip it on right now.
Yeah.
So let me not sound like I'm not giving them credit for that. Remember when this team was going to see if they could hunt the Yanks down for the best record of baseball? They are 9 games better right now than the New York Yankees. Now, a lot of that has to do with the Dodgers winning, but also has to do with the Yankees' struggles. This is a baseball team, Donnie, that since July 9th is 11-21 overall. That's just losing baseball. And that's over a month sample size there. Shutout yesterday at home. Aaron Hicks is awful at baseball. Certainly seems like It's the first time he's ever even attempted to understand this sport. And that kind of is the problem, I think, at times. And I know sometimes when you're a fan, you're caught up in the minutiae. You see it a little bit more, certainly, and I can understand that. I mean, but Donnie, it's Anthony Rizzo in the 3-hole batting .221. It's Josh Donaldson, my goodness, in the 4-hole batting .222. Andrew Benintendi, I mean, remember when he showed up at Yankees? Batting what? A clean .320-something? Yeah, it's barely above 300 at this rate here. The problem right now for the Yankees, I know everybody worries about, is that pitching going to hold up. But this is the thing with the Yanks. Everyone, this is what happens. The pitching, it's not the pitching. It's not the pitching. This lineup has these moments where you go, it's Judge and nobody else. Donnie, Aaron Judge feels like he walks every at-bat. I know he didn't walk yesterday. That's how it feels, though. He's not getting any good pitches to hit now with the Giancarlo Stanton injury, taking some protection out of the lineup here. Will the Yankees have a lot of runway to get hot? But it absolutely has started to hit a bit of a concerning point here overall with this baseball team's performances.
Yeah, the ebbs and flows of the Major League Baseball season. We were joking about even into last year, like, don't take the Yankees team total to after the 5th inning because they might have 0 or only 1 run at the time. But we started the season out a little bit slow at the plate, but the pitching was carrying them there. And the joker, the handicap every day for me was, all right, you got 3 guys in the middle of the order and everybody else stinks. And then for a while, it looked like that switched up. Like, hey, we're getting some timely hitting by more than 2 or 3 players in that lineup. And as you look at the card today, and even if it's just against left-handed pitching, we're back to the same old, same old. It's Judge, it's Rizzo, and nobody else in that lineup. And that can't be, because as we said for the Yankees, yes, they can outpitch you. Yes, they have a very good bullpen. But the charm of the Yankees is if pitching isn't going our way, we have the ability to put up 5, 6, and 7 runs because of how powerful our lineup is. They are built for the 3-run home run. They're not built for the 3 singles and to score 1 run here. We'll see if the Yankees get it together, but I think your point is valid here. There's a long runway from right now until the playoffs to get everything right and get everybody healthy and back in order.
I also want to move on and quickly get to Sandy Alcantara here, Donnie, having an unbelievable season, an 11-5 record, a 1.92 ERA, over 150 strikeouts already, and you see the odds continuing to move when we talk about winning that NL Cy Young, minus 310 on Sandy Alcantara. I don't want to harp on this too much because it's likely not going to come to fruition, but I really do not understand how he has the same odds to an NL MVP as CJ Cron. It doesn't make a lick of sense to me how Sandy Alcantara right now leads the entire National League in WAR and is at 150-1 to win NL MVP.
And the interesting part about that too, Kevin, is you can almost say, well, if the Marlins were really good, he'd get more looks at MVP. No. It's actually more impressive what he's doing right now while the team stinks every single night and barely give him any run support. The simple fact is when Alcantara's on the mound, you are expecting a Marlins win. Now, dummy like me bets against him last night and takes the loss on that one. But sometimes that's the way it goes, which way it lines up and the way you see it. But Alcantara's been so impressive, dating way back, I think it's like 1972, Steve Carlton in the Philadelphia Phillies, guy won like 27 games. The Phillies won like 50 games. That is like an MVP type season because where would the Marlins be without Alcantara as a starting pitcher? Who knows at this point? So his year is pretty impressive. I just think there's that bias where the pitchers, Kevin, they have their own award, and that's that. That's just the way the voters see it.
While I know that is what they see, that is not true because we've seen pitchers win MVPs before. And I understand that Goldschmidt as a hitter is going to have an edge. But what continues to puzzle me is how Alcantara is not even in the race or mentioned. And you bring it up. The fact that he's on a losing baseball team. Right now, Donnie, they are winning 44% of their games as a season. They win 63% of the time that he has the baseball over his 24 starts this year. It's odds every 5 days. What he just did yesterday is more impactful than any Marlin will do over the next 5, 10, or 15 days. I promise you that. Yet not in the race at all. Interesting stuff. Keep it right here. It's the early line on SportsGrid.
If you want to pick like a pro, you need to be in the know. The future of sports gaming is now, and we take you inside the lines, breaking down all the action and what it means for your bet slip. Turn down the game and tune into Sports Grid Radio. Other networks talk sports talk, but we walk the walk, right up to the window. Sports Grid Radio.
Listen free on the Sports Grid Radio app, iHeart, or TuneIn, or catch us on Sirius XM Sports Grid Channel 159.
Maurice Allen, 2015-2016 European Long Drive Tour champion, 2017 world number 1. Me personally, I keep my game face on me all the time. Especially coming out of the bunker, leaving the range, or even leaving the course. What's your story?
Pro Football Doc has found its new home right here with Sports Injury Central. And with that comes our expansion into other sports. Sports Injury Central will give you nonstop exclusive injury analysis from experienced team doctors from all 3 major sports. Doctors with resumes that include teams like the Chicago Bulls, the Texas Rangers, and the LA Chargers. So gain a fantasy, DFS, and betting edge right now for free at SICScore.com.
Diamond Bets.
Fernando Tatis Jr. getting popped for a PED suspension for 80 games. Now, I know performance-enhancing drugs are something that, even here at the network, they encourage us, especially myself. They say, please, can you enhance your performance just a little bit more, Joe? This year, it's not going to happen next year for a good chunk of the season. And guess what? This is more important now that you added Juan Soto. So obviously this news rocked Major League Baseball.
Only on Sports Grid.
You might be the next daily fantasy millionaire. No matter what you watch or where you play, learn from the world's best DFS players. Lineup building tools, expert projections, and advanced stats change the way you play the game. Dominate the competition. DailyRoto.com, the player's choice.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
They're not going to start him. So if he comes in, hypothetically, let's say things don't go well and you're at the halfway point, week 8, week 9, you start playing him. I don't believe you can win Rookie of the Year starting halfway through. That kid, Pickens, if they throw him the ball enough, he has looked phenomenally well over any kid I've seen yet.
The Sports Grid Network.
Back with you here on Sports Grid. On Monday, we've been going head-to-head at the quarterback position. On Tuesdays, we've been taking a look at the running backs. And you know what? I decided to spice things up a little bit. Everybody loves a good triple threat match. Trios tournament on the way for the best wrestling promotion in the world. We don't have to dive into all that right now. How about Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, and Joe Mixon? All running backs with comparable numbers when we take a look at these season-long projections and the chance to figure out of these 3 who really stands out the most to us. And I'm excited to get into this because we're going to start this off with Dalvin Cook, who I think might just be secretly Donnie's favorite player in the NFL. You cannot bring up the Minnesota Vikings and not have Donnie talk to you about his excitement level to get involved with Dalvin Cook and a Vikings team total. Now, Donnie, tell me a little bit before we get into that. Are you all right over there? Faces look a little out of whack. Is everything all right?
Yeah, don't freeze me out here. And we're going to get into a running back smackdown competition here, Kevin. How do you like that?
Boo.
No,
Let's
all
boo
right,
this
try.
guy.
I'll
Let's
try
get
my
this
best.
guy out of here. Yeah. No, it's going to be a dynamite competition, my man. Talk to me, though. Dalvin Cook, rushing touchdown over under 8.5. Rushing yards, 1150 at a hook. Most rushing yards in the NFL. The number for Dalvin Cook checks in at 10-1. One of your favorite backs in the sport. What do you think about him season-long projections?
I love Dalvin Cook. I do. If there's one game, Kevin, I'm going to cheat here a little bit, right? Because I'm going to tell you, like week to week, Dalvin Cook is sensational. He's exactly what I want. When I look for a team total in a football team, Dalvin Cook pops off the page and screams, take the Vikings this week, no matter what the total is. Why? Because when he's healthy, he's the ultimate home run hit. Out of the backfield, play action pass, screen passes. He does it all. Hand it off 75 yards. Amen. He can do it. Score touchdowns in the red zone. We've seen it multiple times. But Kevin, let me read this to you. He's been in the NFL since 2017. 4 games played in 2017. 11 games played in 2018. 19, 14 games. 2020, 14 games. 2021, 13 games. It's scary because look at the production on just 14 games in 2019. 1,100 yards on the ground. 2020, 1,550 on the ground. 2021, 13 games, 1,150 on the ground. What does he have today? Or looking at there, 1,150 yards, but also the touchdowns. Kevin, he is a goal line back. He should be able to do that. If Dalvin Cook is healthy for 14 games on the season, look at 2019, Kevin. 13 touchdowns. Look at 2020 on the ground. 16 touchdowns. Now, I took a little bit of a step back last year. 13 games, only 6 touchdowns. It's got to be over. I can't take this out of my head and say, Donnie, you might only get 14 games. If I get 14 games, I'm cashing that ticket. I love it.
The problem, man, for Dalvin, though, is everything you mentioned, right? Last year, I know that the injury bug really impacted your season-long bets, right?
Yeah.
Don, if you bet Dalvin Cook, I can't. You can chew my ear off all day about this shouldn't have happened, this shouldn't have happened. Not with Dalvin Cook, though, right? Man, I just needed another game at a Dalvin Cook. That's on you. You know that. And I know he has the ability, as proven here, to get over numbers in smaller sample sizes, but I just think there are better options on the board. And maybe one of these Dalvin injuries ultimately checks in and is really bad. Because, Donnie, let's be honest here, right? It's more likely he only plays half the year than all of the year. We've never seen him get to 16 games or 17 games like this year lines up. What about the fresh young legs of Najee Harris? Harris checks in this year with a potential for a huge workload in Pittsburgh. Rushing touchdown number, just the same as Dalvin Cook at 8.5. Yardage, though, a little bit lower. 1,100 flat and a half, with the most rushing yards odds over the course of this season at 18-1. Najee Harris, year 2 in Pittsburgh. Quarterback situation is horrible unless you get backed into a corner and you try and defend Mitchell Trubisky, which by the end of it you'll realize is a horrible place to be in. What do you think about Najee Harris coming into the year?
I mean, if we just take a look at the rushing numbers, right? 1,100 yards is the benchmark for us. So last year as a rookie, Kevin, we just talked about Dalvin Cook. He can never stay healthy. How about a rookie playing all 17 weeks last year with Big Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers? How about him getting 307 rushing attempts as a rookie? I thought we were led to believe also the Pittsburgh Steelers were, we're about winning games, but we don't just hand things over to guys that get drafted and are drafted high, like Kenny Pickett. He's got to earn it, K-Dub. He's hanging with the number 3s here throughout camp, regardless of what he does in the preseason games. Like, had actually really good game 1 in the preseason. But we're shown to believe that Steeler football is in the grime, right? Steeler football is in the cold weather at Heinz/Acrisure Field here, and playing in Cincinnati, and playing the Baltimore Ravens, and playing the Cleveland Browns where it's windy conditions. I love this because if I'm going to get a healthy Najee Harris and questionable quarterback play and have a very good defense, what does that equate, Kevin? What's our game plan here for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year? Let's go into the season with Mitchell Trubisky. Throw 45 times. That doesn't make any sense. Or how about vice versa? Game 3, Kenny Pickett comes in. Let's have Kenny throw 45 times in this game. No. Keep the football on the ground, play lower scoring games, play good defenses. Will it equate to a Super Bowl? Probably not. But in Mike Tomlin's case, can it equate to a 500-year or better? Absolutely. Najee Harris's ground numbers to go over 1,100, I love it. I absolutely love it.
The funny thing is, I again have some hesitation here with the Najee Harris numbers. Because here's the thing, Donnie. I know that it's very funny, but last year I feel like we talked very negatively about the Steelers all year long. Somewhat understandably, though, they felt like an awful football team. They did go to the playoffs at 9-7-1, though. And that ability to be in games, win games, allows you to use your franchise running back, which Najee Harris is, a little bit more. If all of a sudden this is a 5-11 team, and I know, or 5-12, Steelers fans probably can't believe I just said that, but the win total's 7.5 here, right? This is not a team that's supposed to be above 500. Worst odds in their division. Do you actually believe that an entire division is going to play above 500 football? I don't. I think that's a lot to ask of the Pittsburgh Steelers there. Now, he'll be able to get his work, earlier in football games. I understand that. But also, Najee Harris is a guy that they do view as a 3-down back, so they know that they have the ability to throw him the football as well to make sure that he is getting his touches. It's not an offensive line that I'm in love with here. I worry a little bit. Could Najee make, and this might be a little counterproductive here, what I'm saying, could the touchdown number make a little bit more sense, though? Because if I'm in the red zone, there's no way I am going to let Big Ben's a veteran, right? Who loves to throw the ball on the 2-yard line, an awful, fade route to Chase Claypool. Now, if I'm inside the 10, I probably should just hand it off to Najee Harris 3 times. Does 8.5 touchdowns maybe work a little bit better?
I actually think the opposite direction, K-Dub, and it's not because I see last year, well, we only had 7 last year, so let's go under it again. If I'm looking at an offense that I don't think is going to be high octane, and I think you have some very competent teams in your division that can play defense, like Cincinnati's defense, moving up those charts here. We know Cleveland can get after the quarterback and also the Baltimore Ravens, and it's not one of those divisions, Kevin. It's like, hey, in December, we get to play a nice, sunny Florida or half of our teams like the NFC South are in domes. You're going to be playing outside in bad weather. So I don't know how fast we're moving up and down the field because the chances, right? That's what we have. How many times are we getting in the red zone? But more importantly, as a running back, how many times, Kevin, are we first and goal from the 1-yard line where we know we can just pound it in? He's going to score touchdowns, no question about it. He's not going to be Miles Sanders, from last year saying, well, we're all this talent, you just can't score any touchdowns. He'll score, but I'm a little bit lighter on the touchdown number than in the overall yardage because I want to see the frequency that the Steelers can move the football in that division.
In that division, Joe Mixon is the last back we get to. Rushing touchdown number, 9.5. Higher than both of these guys, but the yardage is a little bit underneath both at 1075.5. 16-1, though, for the most rushing yards over the course of the season. We know that this is an offense that obviously has monstrous expectations coming into Joe Burrow year 3. We have everybody's favorite Jamar Chase year 2. T. Higgins continuing to shine throughout this offense. Mixon last year rushed for 1,200 yards and 13 total touchdowns. What do you think about Joe Mixon with another year and a potentially really high-octane offense in the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yeah, it's hard to hate any of these running backs that we picked at. I mean, you want to talk about 3 bangers here that can really get after it, and you can see them being the lead dogs. But Joe Mixon certainly is one of those lead dogs that we see. 292 touches last year from the running back position, 1,205 yards. Now, almost the opposite here. Do I think it's doable that he can get, let's just say, 1,100 yards to round up his rushing total? I really do, but I think you hit the nail on the head. This is a high-octane offense. Joe Burrow, who came back yesterday, from all look-sees here, Kevin, slicing up the defense already in 7-on-7s. So let's just take a look at this offensive line rebuilt and looks fairly good now as opposed to in previous years. We take a look at the wide receiver position. It's wide open out there. Guys are going to be just flowing down. And Joe Burrow, as long as he's healthy at quarterback, this team is one of those where each and every week you expect them, Kevin, 24-plus points here and to be in every game and maybe even challenged to win a Super Bowl like they got there last year. But if I'm looking overall at these Mixon stats for me, the 9.5 touchdowns, I want the over. Because the same thing with Najee Harris I just talked about, where I'd rather have the yardage because I don't know if we're going to get the opportunities. Trust me on this. The Bengals are going to be in the red zone a lot. They're inside the 5. Joe Mixon is punching it in. Joe Mixon to get double-digit rushing touchdowns this year through 17 games, sign me up on that.
It's really interesting because Mixon last year had a wild run. 3 consecutive games of multi-rushing touchdowns there. And that's how you can get over that number, right, with a breeze here. Do I trust the Mixon health enough? Was a question I initially was wondering here, right? Because the year before he had only played the 6 games, but he's been largely healthy the remainder of his career. And also, he's been able to get over this number 3 times already in his young career when we talk about the 1075.5. Dalvin Cook, I worry about the injuries. Najee Harris, I worry about the offense and the team overall. Mixon's yards for me at 1075.5 feel the most comfortable of the trio. Of these guys, Donnie, though, to wrap this up here, we talked about touchdowns and yardage for 3 different superstar running backs. What's the favorite number here? I think for me it would either be the Mixon yardage or the Najee Harris touchdowns. What's the favorite number here for you?
I got to tell you, it would be a big upset for me. And if we're talking about, I'm just going to focus on the Steelers right now. If Najee Harris doesn't get 1,100 yards on the ground, you might be looking at what, Kevin, a bottom 5 offense then, which means nothing worked, because we're not going to say, well, Trubisky was so good through the air, he threw for 4,900 yards. That's not happening here. So the upset for me, Najee Harris is going to be one of those backs that gets 300 touches. I'll trust that he gets 1,100 yards.
More than fair. By the way, again, these guys all involved when we talk about the most rushing yards in the NFL. Dalvin Cook has the 3rd best odds, Joe Mixon with the 5th best odds, and then Najee Harris with the 9th best odds, all inside that top 10. But the one thing to know about that market is Dalvin Cook is at 10-1 at the 3rd best odds. The 2 guys in front of him, though, a bit of distance. Jonathan Taylor's the favorite at plus 400, and Derrick Henry checks in at plus 650. Why don't we just keep with the running back theme here and talk a little Alvin Kamara? Can we get involved with Alvin Kamara in this market here? I actually don't think they have his number up, which is a smart move by the FanDuel Sportsbook, because some good news around Alvin Kamara. We'll hit that as we close out hour number 1 next.
Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
People are going to the betting window and betting them now before the trade takes place.
How dare
Diamond
they
bets.
do what's fiscally responsible? See how it plays out. Buffalo's going all in right
Football
now.
full circle.
All their chips in the middle of the table. It's do or die for them.
And Godwin being out, they've had a little bit of a shakeup.
In-game live all access.
You could take the points. You could take the money line. And
we have to go to San Jose, too. Maybe a small play on San Jose. I'm going to go both underdogs here. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Wow. In-game
Phillies
live.
here,
Prime
over minus
time.
128. You do have to lay a little bit of wood here, Donnie, but I think against Patrick Corbin.
But, boy, you want to give me 8.5 points with a desperate team facing elimination.
Get the winning edge. Only on Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
You might be the next daily fantasy millionaire. No matter what you watch or where you play, learn from the world's best DFS players. Lineup building tools, expert projections, and advanced stats change the way you play the game. Dominate the competition. DailyRoto.com, the player's choice.
Diamond bets.
Dodgers heading into the weekend, minus 160. This morning, when you wake up bright and early and you get the crust out of your eye, it's plus 155. The Mets were plus 220 after Jacob deGrom's 1-0 win yesterday, plus 200. So the Mets are getting ever closer here, my friend, to this National League number. It's a 3-team race for the National League crown. It's the Dodgers, it's the Mets, it's the Braves. What's fascinating to me is that the Brewers are still plus 1,400 and the Cardinals are plus 15.
Only on Sports Grid. Pharrell, coast to coast.
10 years ago, you couldn't even touch California. Now, Prop 26 is one that allows Indian gaming on Indian lands and 4 casinos. Prop 27, everywhere. And needless to say, FanDuel, DraftKings, all the big boys are supporting Prop 27, including Major League Baseball. prediction is it passes in a landslide, and they creatively say
the Sports Grid Network.
Alvin Kamara was able to get some good news, I think, yesterday. It's all relative, right? It all kind of depends. I guess the here and now is a little bit better than worrying down the road, as there is a suspension that looms over the head of Alvin Kamara. Now, the one interesting kind of caveat to this is the Deshaun Watson suspension and the 6-game initial ruling. We're like, oh, now, are they really going to give Alvin Kamara 6 games? Which is what the initial thought process was when we heard about some of this Kamara news. Well, it looks like we're going to have to keep on waiting to really get a word here on Alvin Kamara, and waiting just beyond this season as the court hearings continue to be pushed back. Adam Schefter reporting, Don, that it seems more and more likely that he is going to be able to play this entire season and miss no time through that suspension.
Yeah, I think the NFL, PR department and their penalties department, as I like to call it, are really wrapped up in this whole Deshaun Watson thing, which leaves the Alvin Kamara like, oh, good. It's actually pushed to the end of the year for his court date. All right, we don't have to make a ruling during the season, so we have to follow too many things at once, because I do believe they want to make sure they get this Deshaun Watson thing correct. But for the Saints' perspective, this is a home run here. You're talking about not sure where Jameis Winston is going to wind up week 1 in the NFL, and quite frankly, hurt his foot the other day at practice, which they say isn't a big deal at this point. But you need all your guns blazing right out of the gate, because there's a lot of question marks here with the Saints, from a coaching staff to quarterback to players coming back from missing 2 years, talking about Michael Thomas. To have Alvin Kamara as a mainstay, healthy game 1, that's massive news for the Saints.
Listen, at the end of the day, just being out there for Kamara makes a big difference. He actually is posted for the most rushing yards over the course of the year. It's 40-1. We know that Alvin Kamara is a guy that impacts the game in a number of ways. The market, though, if you were hoping to take advantage of this Kamara news, is more so, I think at least, Donnie, most rushing touchdowns. Same price, 40-1. We've seen Kamara explode for huge touchdown performances. We go to the NBA to start hour number 2.